one game away. Blow up. We're playing for something, man. We're playing for something. It's gotta mean something to you. It gotta mean something. Everything you got. Everything you got. Let's finish this.
Do it, fellas.
Let's go.
Let's do it, fellas.
Finish 2 3. 1 2 3. Finish.
I can't even think about all of the shit I did to fit in. Past hard to watch like a fucking scary movie. I'm always happy to meet somebody that never knew me. Change for the better, hope niggas are living through me. I put it all on the wax so the people can know the true me. Hard to remain sane when the people you love the most is what's causing the damn pain. Y'all beef by the same thing, we ain't playing the same game. It's all for my family. She the girl of your fucking dreams, but to me she a plain Jane. You dipper and ball man, I dump when them calls came. This that higher level thinking. I'm the type to jump the fuck off of the shit before it's sinking. Not here for no new shit. My game slider boosted. Ain't I don't have to prove shit. Rockstar fight the fool shit. My movie, this the new script. I want a life with no bullshit. Nigga, I know on these news clips. That's why I dap him and move quick. Won't be around when they move switch. Won't be around when they lose clips. Won't be around for they lose lips. Might be the reason they pull shit. Yeah.
Well, Dak, here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence, and nobody can hang with my stuff. I'm just a big, hairy American winning machine. If you ain't first, you're last.
Yo, it's starting to get cold outside, yo. Everybody at my job, bro, at least all the dudes, it's hoodie season. I'm telling you, bro, I was standing at the clock in the other day and like 15 dudes walked in with hoodies on, bro, including me, bro. It's hoodie season. You better bundle up. What will my man Steve Smith Sr. say? Ice up. Yo, man, what is good with it, man? We can't, come on, man. You know I wasn't going to stay in that tone all night, man. I just had to get a little bit pumped up, you know what I'm saying? But we can't be having night shows and then me having a little, the monotone voice and all that, talking all low and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to seduce a motherfucker on here. I'm trying to get you pumped up, trying to get you excited for what we about to talk about. So we getting into Thursday night football tonight. Now, I'm probably not going to spend a shit ton of time on that topic. Obviously, I'm going to spend a good amount of time on the topic. But other things to talk about. This is not the prediction video for the upcoming games this Sunday. That's not that. I might talk about a game or two, but that's not what this video is. This video is talking about the Thursday night game tonight between the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals. Talking about Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen matchup coming up. I'm going to talk about those two players individually also. Not really towards the matchup coming up as much as just talking about those two. And a couple other things I'm going to touch on before we get on up out of here. But how dope was the day? Yo. How dope was the day, man? I care to know. Let's get into it. So, 27-10. I think it was 27-12. 27-12 victory for the Cincinnati Bengals. Not a shit ton of offense. I was realizing as I was watching this game, Cincinnati is really becoming a one-trick pony on offense. I'll get to that a little bit later, but boy, the primetime games, the last like three primetime, the set of primetime games this week, obviously Thursday is the beginning of the football week for most people, and Monday is the end. But the primetime games for Sunday, Monday, Thursday this week just was not good. Just collectively, they weren't that good. And the Dolphins had opportunities to come back and win this game. But obviously, to start it off, Tua Tagovailoa got hurt on one of the sacks. He was slammed to the turf. It really wasn't slammed, but that's the word they kept using. He was sacked. And when he came down on the turf, his elbow hit the turf first, but then his head popped it. He had to be stretchered off. I didn't like the visuals. They kept showing how his fingers got stuck because of a neurological issue that he was suffering from at that moment. I believe they was talking about. But they did give reports on Tua, updates on him throughout the game. By the end of the game, I think they said he was responsive. He got discharged from the hospital and he'll ride back on a plane with the Miami Dolphins. So that's great news. As soon as Tua got hurt, I'm not going to spend a shit ton of time talking about Tua's injury, though. You can go look at somebody else for that. As soon as Tua got hurt, immediately I thought to myself, the Dolphins are going to lose this game. I don't give a fuck what the first two drives or the drive immediately after Tua was down that Teddy Bridgewater had. because obviously the defense that didn't look that great anyways for the Bengals. Obviously they could, they wasn't prepared for Teddy Bridgewater, so they could probably possibly let Teddy Bridgewater get a drive. But for me, Teddy Bridgewater is Teddy Midwater to the end of time. I know what he is. I don't know. That's why I was so irritated earlier in the season when I saw Sean Payton go on Colin Cowherd and say that it was a lot of dudes who he thought were going to be replaced this season. And two of the dudes who he basically was vouching for to replace their starters was Teddy Bridgewater replacing Tua and Jimmy Garoppolo replacing Trey Lance. And that right there, that statement when he was talking about that, let me know why I felt the way I felt about him in this current moment. I mean, over the last couple years, as far as his offensive play calling and whatnot. He is outdated. For him to believe that those two quarterbacks specifically, just because he liked Teddy or I don't know. But him making that statement to me was just idiotic. Because while I don't think Tua has the strongest arm, and that showed tonight on his interception, because he had Tyreek on that post, or whatever you want to call this route, because it started as a post, it looked like a post, and then because of his speed, it just turned into a straight he hitting that outside. If Tua had a great arm, he could have led Tyreek to that, and that would have been an easy touchdown. Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, a lot of quarterbacks making that throw. That's the only problem. Baker's not making that throw. So I know it's people out there who'll be like, yo, every quarterback should make that throw. That's not a throw that every quarterback can make. It's just the reality of it. And I'm not mad at Tua for not being able to make that throw, but if he could have made that throw, that's a touchdown, or at least it's close to a touchdown, because he underthrew it, and he massively underthrew it. And I think one of the things that I think could help Tua get more out of his arm is if he fixed his throwing motion. His throwing motion kind of remind me of Tim Tebow's throwing motion, where it feel like they gather too much, or I don't really like his throwing motion. And I believe if he kind of fixed his throwing motion up some, he could get more out of his out of the balls. But either way, he underthrew it, and Von Bell walked away with one of his 2 interceptions on the night. But once that, the Bengals didn't, to me, look that much better. To me, the Bengals' biggest plays of the night was when they could hit guys on streak patterns, because they do have 3 great receivers. And if you as a defense and a coordinator on defense decide to play, you don't even have to play a patient game. If you just play a disciplined game like the Dolphins play for the majority of the game, then you can beat the Bengals. That's what I'm seeing. Because the Bengals don't run a good offense as far as like the intermediate routes and things of that nature. Like, yeah, they can dink and dunk like a lot of other teams, but they don't really have a legitimate offense outside of a couple slants and just the receiver screens and shit like that, and throwing it deep down the field on like streak patterns and I think that's one of the reasons that Joe Burrow gets sacked the way he do. Is when you look at the Cincinnati, and I said this last year about this offense, at the same point in time it feel like last year after they had got a Thursday night game against the Jaguars. So maybe this is where they turn their season around. But in that Thursday night game against the Jaguars, you knew they should have won that game, but the game stayed relatively close throughout because this offense for Cincinnati could not consistently put together drives. Because if they could not hit that deep pass down the field, they really didn't know how to put together drives to score. And if you are a defense, and the only way they can beat you is by throwing that deep pass, then you would think they would keep the safeties high, or they would, smartly double team. Because it's so weird that the Dolphins kept leaving Xavier Howard. And I understand Xavier Howard is a good cornerback. He's one of the better cornerbacks in the league. But leaving him one-on-one with receivers who, for one, have height on him. All 3 of the receivers for the Cincinnati, I think, is taller than Xavier Howard. So leaving him on an island with dudes who already he giving up height on anyway. Because this ain't like no regular cornerback matchup where it's like, yeah, Xavier Howard is like, what, 6 foot? 5'11" or something like that. T. Higgins like 6'2". You know what I'm saying? Like, when you dealing with receivers who already are the more athletic of the two and you leaving him on islands with these type of receivers, I put that on the Dolphins. I don't put that on Xavier Howard. It's tough to continuously have to defend dudes one-on-one. And I hear people say throughout games like, yo, you got to eventually be able to cover man-on-man. Well, yeah, that's true, but the safeties can also be smart enough to not bite on dumbass plays, so I don't have a dude running, streaking up this left side. Because the reality is this: if anytime a great quarterback with a speed demon or a great receiver who can run a streak on the outside, anytime the safeties bite down, or either the free safety or the strong, it don't matter, whichever one decide to be fooled somehow by either coming down and leaving a dude on the outside one-on-one. Either he don't miscommunication, biting on a blitz or something like that. Anytime that happens and you can hit him one-on-one, most quarterbacks and receivers are going to make that play. Most of the time. And one of my biggest things with Joe Burrow is, as much as I like Joe Burrow, these type of things, when I be seeing this in games, don't really do much for me. Every quarterback should be able to read these type of reads that Joe Burrow make. Like, it's great that he can make that read, but it's not like I'm not overhyping it the way some people overhype it. The fact of the matter is, a lot of Joe Burrow's throws don't have, like tonight. He didn't have to make a ton of contested throws and whatnot tonight. And I saw somebody on Twitter say last week, they was like, yo, I really think Joe Burrow is a product of his great receivers. So far this season, Joe Burrow has looked, and they hype Joe Burrow up a lot. But it's no coincidence to me that when his receivers aren't dominating, he ain't either. Like when a defense can shut, and just imagine this. Miami, for a large portion of this game, found a way to shut down all of the three receivers. And it's very weird to me that people praise Zach Taylor when I see a game like this, where you have Joe Mixon, you have the receivers that you have. I don't care if your tight end position ain't even at a B+ right now. You still have three great receivers, a great running back, and you still, in games like this, and I'm just talking about this year so far, cannot figure out how to put together consistent scoring drives. Yeah, you did it against the Jets. Yeah, you just did it. And I understand Miami came into this game 3-0, but nobody who been watching Miami thought that they should have been 3-0. Now, listen, I still think Miami could have won this game. That's the interesting part. But it's just those defensive lapses where you leave a cornerback one-on-one with these receivers. And Miami's defense really didn't get to Joe Burrow the way some of these other teams. This was the best game I've seen Cincinnati play so far this year as far as the offensive line. Like, Joe Burrow really didn't get sacked nowhere near as much as he done been sacked in these other games. And I thought he had a lot more time. But the big plays down the field kept killing Miami. Just every time Joe Burrow saw that one-on-one matchup or had the time to throw the ball down the field. You know what this offense starting to kind of remind me of? The offense kind of reminded me of the Texans offense with Deshaun Watson a couple years back, where Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins, it was, even though DeAndre Hopkins, we look at him as a guy who, you know, he can run every route in the route tree, he can hit you intermediate and whatnot. A lot of the plays from that year, like Deshaun Watson was taking hella sacks and people was blaming it on the offensive line, but if you was really watching, it was like, yo, they call plays that take so long to develop because they want to keep hitting the home run ball. This dude taking sacks because of that. It's not just the offensive line. They can't hold up, but for so long, especially when you know certain type of blitzes is coming and certain type of defensive plays is coming. So this Cincinnati offense kind of remind me of this to an extent, except for they got better receivers. None of them dudes better than prime D-Hop, but all around they have the better cast than, you know, the Texans had at the time. I don't think they had a better quarterback. I think at that time Deshaun Watson is better than Joe Burrow is right now. I think Joe Burrow a little bit overrated. I'm not saying that as a hater or nothing like that. I know when you say somebody overrated, people could think you hating. I don't think that's in a bad way. Some people thought Joe Burrow was a top 5 quarterback. I didn't. I did think he a top 10. I still think he could possibly be a top 10, but he definitely he a top 10 anyways because a lot of other dudes falling out of it. So listen, in these type of games, you just got to figure out a way to get to the finish line. Their next game is against Baltimore. I guarantee. I was looking at this, the point total for Miami over the last 4 games they done played, right? They basically living in the 20 range. You know, I think they had a 21, a 24, a 42, 15, something around those, 12, something around those lines. They basically living in that 2018 range, basically. The only game in which they blasted, like put up a bunch of points with 42 against Baltimore. Everybody been saying the Patriots offense struggled this year. You know who they didn't struggle against? Baltimore. Like, so I would not be surprised if coming out next week, Cincinnati bombs over Baghdad against Baltimore. Would not surprise me because Baltimore's defense is atrocious. It just is what it is. But if you're Miami, one thing I did notice while Tua was in, matter of fact, I'll get to that. One thing I did notice when Tua was in the game, because they do run, a lot of Tua's throws is wide open. Like, a lot of his completions is to wide open dudes. Like, and that's obviously a product of the offensive play calling. But I do believe at some point in time, like, Mike McDaniels, they're not going to be able to get away with some of this simplistic play calling. Like, this, I don't think you can have 10, 11, 12 play drives all the time. And I obviously know that that Miami have the big play ability with Waddle and Tyreek Hill, literally 2 and 3, and lead in stats and the lead in receiving yards in the NFL. But because I don't think Tua had as strongest an arm, I still think you can hit the play. Obviously, he's still an NFL quarterback, so he's going to be able to hit him. But that's not something you asking Tua to do all the time. And you also can't depend on defenses consistently having breaks in coverage. So, and I just think if they can't figure out, like, well, what I'm trying to say. Because it's hard to say, like, oh, they don't hit enough big plays when you got the 2 and 3 in lead and receiving yards. A lot of that came from the Baltimore game, though. Like, a lot of those yards for both receivers, because both of them damn near had 160 yards apiece, if they didn't have more than that apiece. Like, both of them motherfuckers basically put up 200 yards apiece, bro. Waddle and Hill killed Baltimore. But what I'm saying is, I'm looking at a game like this tonight. Every throw, basically, for Tua, it's like I say for Jared Goff, bro. You're not going to have the script in some of these big-time games all the time. It's just not going to happen. Like, Mike McDaniels can only make you look great for so long. At some point in time, you're going to have to make the plays, just like Jimmy G. And I do believe it looked like Tua headed down that right now, and he got a shit ton of talent around him, and that can prolong the inevitable, just like for Jimmy G. He had a lot of talent around him. But I would like to see Tua. I want to see what it's like if they give Tua a game where it's not like we sticking to a play calling type of thing. Like let the script go and let's see what Tua can do if you just let him go out there and be a quarterback for a day. Let him make the reads. Let him audible out of plays and shit like that. Like, I don't need to see the script like Jared Goff go through, okay, first we're going to run this play, and then we're going to do this play. You know what I'm saying? I don't care to see that. Because Tua won't be able to rely on Mike McDaniels out-coaching great players in big games. Because great players you can't coach that sometimes. Because it is what it is. You couldn't coach the end of that Bills-Chiefs game. Great players just made plays. And so I think you got to get Tua at the point, if he come back, and I believe he will come back, where he confident enough to be able to just go off script and make plays, and you trust him to go off script and make plays. Because if they don't, I don't think the Dolphins are going to. Because I do think the Dolphins make the playoffs. I just don't think you can do too much damage to teams with quarterbacks who don't have to play by a script. Excuse me. You know what I'm saying? They not looking forward to the coach drawing up play after play. You know what I'm saying? They can go out there and dissect the defense themselves. They can see what they see and make adjustments and calls and decide what they're going to do from that point on. You know what I'm saying? They don't need, as great as Andy Reid and Bieniemy is, Pat Mahomes relying on them, but to an extent. Josh Allen relying on his guys, but to an extent. LAMAR, Herbert, Brady, all these guys, obviously they rely on their coaches and whatnot and the play callers, but to an extent they believe they can go out there and get it done if they, if those play callers not having the greatest of days. I don't think you can do that with Tua right now. And so Yeah. Now, I was debating if I was going to really talk about Teddy Midwater too much because I don't expect him to start again. I think Tua will start the next game. It was so crazy when people was talking about the Tua injury because people started going at Miami real quick. And I was like, you know what this proves? When something go wrong, people do immediately try to find somebody to blame. It's crazy. Because as soon as Tua got hurt, people start yelling, oh, Miami's fault, Miami's fault. I'm like, damn, B. That's crazy. But, nonetheless, Cincinnati get the win. That's a big win for them. They needed to keep that. They needed to win for one because you don't want to fall to 1-3. You just don't want to fall to 1-3. And while I don't think the offense looked that great, they did make the key plays they needed to make towards the end of this game to end up sealing the deal. Now, I don't think Cincinnati it's just this offense, man. This Cincinnati, the defense looks straight. Trey Hendrickson looked great. I'm not going to lie. I like Trey Hendrickson. I don't know what the fuck the Saints let this dude walk for. Man, I don't know if I can't even blame him actually because I did not see this in Trey, and I watched the Saints. And I saw his great year he had before he left. If he can finish out the season strong, bro, we might have to put him on that list of great pass rushers too. And not only is he a great pass rusher, Trey Hendrickson do a lot of shit, just like Randy Gregory. Now, the interesting thing about Cincinnati's defense is, while I think Cincinnati's defense is decent. It's better than Baltimore's, but they didn't really give up. They gave up the big play, but it wasn't like they didn't give it up as consistent as like the Browns give it up, the Ravens give it up, Miami gave it up tonight. They got good players on the defense, but I do think it's a defense that can be had, especially if they can't get to the quarterback. I think that's where the strength of the Cincinnati Bengals defense is. I don't really think it's the secondary. I think it's that pass rush. If they can get home, and they pretty decent at stopping the run also. They did give up some rush yards towards the end of this game, but for the most part, solid game. I do think some of these defenses are not as great as these games make them look. You know what I'm saying? It's just some of these teams is really offensively challenged. Like, I don't think I do not think the Dolphins defense is really that great. Like, I saw what Baltimore did to them. I understand what they did. They won these games. But it just don't feel like they done made a lot of opportunistic play. To me, their defense is exactly what I said is winning Super Bowls nowadays. You can give up all the yards in the world and all that. As long as you can make key plays and key moments to win games, you good. And that's basically what the Dolphins defense has been up to this point tonight. And so some of these games, because it's offensively challenged teams right now, that teams might not even be this offensively challenged towards the end of the season. But right now, it feels like a lot like the Packers was offensively challenged, the Bucks, even tonight. I don't feel like some of these defenses is really that great. It's just because the offense. However, the Broncos defense, like I can tell the difference. The Broncos defense, while that was an offensively challenged team, the Broncos and the 49ers, you could clearly see the Broncos defense making big plays throughout that game. Like, that's why I was challenging the notion that was a terrible game. Yeah, it wasn't a great game. Like I said, probably the worst. Like, it's like, look at this game tonight. Tua wasn't really playing that great when he was playing. Teddy Midwater played exactly like I thought he was going to play when he came in. And Joe Burrow didn't really play that great. He was, decent. Was not a worse quarterback matchup or performance by the 2 or the 3 than what I saw on Sunday night between Jimmy Garoppolo and Russell Wilson. They were literally competing to see who could put on the worst quarterback performance of the night. and they ended up setting like one of the worst. That's probably the worst quarterback duo performance I've ever seen. But understanding how bad those offenses were, the Broncos defense was making plays all night. Like, if you couldn't watch, that's why you got to understand what you're watching. Like, you can watch those games and be like, oh, it's a defensive matchup. Or you can watch these games and be like, it's a defensive matchup, but it's because both of these offenses fucking suck. Then you can watch a game and be like, yeah, it's a defensive matchup because both of these offenses fucking suck. But this defense right here is actually making up. I see why this offense is struggling, because that's kind of what it was. I realized why San Francisco's offense was struggling. The Broncos defense was on one Sunday night. And as good as I think San Francisco's defense is, they did not put together the game, in my opinion, that the Broncos, and I've seen San Francisco's defense be great. The Broncos defense Sunday night put together one of the best defensive performances of the season so far by a team. San Francisco realistically should have put up that bad of a performance, because the Broncos defense was phenomenal in every aspect of that game. It was very rare that I saw anybody running free in that game. It was dudes open for the Broncos. Russ just couldn't hit them. It was very rare that dudes was open against the Broncos defense. The pass rush was getting home. The run game couldn't get going because of them. Not only that, both special teams was great also. And while I think San Francisco's defense probably looked a little better because of the because of the special teams looked great also. The special teams for the Broncos worked clean off of the fucking Broncos defense, because the Broncos defense to me was clearly the standout for Sunday night's matchup. Now, with that being said, I would not like to see another 10-11 matchup on a Sunday night game. I do not know why next Thursday night's matchup, and the only reason I remember this is because I just had this conversation. I'm not understanding how Russell Wilson is getting all these fucking primetime games. It's almost like he played for the Cowboys or something. Russell Wilson is playing next week on primetime against the Colts. How is Russell Wilson getting all these primetime games, bro? He done had a Sunday night, a Monday night. He about to have a Thursday night. Like, what's going on? What's going on? And I saw some losing ass Baltimore fan talk about I'm glad we don't got that many primetime games this year. Yo, you got to be a real loser to not want your superstar quarterback to shine on primetime just because you scared we might lose and be embarrassed on primetime. That's some hating shit. That's some scary shit right there. Not hating shit. That's some scary shit right there. Don't live like that. Don't live like that. You got to be able to take those risks. You got to be able to want to be on that type of stage and fail in front of millions, just like you want to succeed in front of millions. If you trust your preparation, if you trust what you've done, then you're going to be fine, big dog. Don't be scared. That's my thing. People talk about, Lamar Jackson betting on himself. Oh, he could get hurt. I've not thought one time like Lamar's going to get hurt. I've thought this entire time Lamar's about to get paid, just like Aaron Judge. Excuse me. It take a big dog to be able to turn down a whole bunch of money in any field. Maybe in your field you're not working with millions of dollars like athletes. Very rarely any field is. But imagine the field you in and you turn down a great payday because you feel like you worth more than that payday. Now listen, I understand it's hard to put yourself in this type of situation because this ain't a normal situation. But there are situations in life where you turn down a great opportunity because you know a better opportunity is ahead of you, or you're worth more than what you are being given. We hear about it all the time when women talk about the pay in movies and whatnot. They feel as though we are just as great as our male counterparts and we deserve to be paid as such. So this ain't something that's new. A lot of people bet on themselves all the time. Lamar Jackson just giving you a new blueprint. People mad, he don't got an agent. He don't need an agent. He not a middle of the pack quarterback who need his agent to figure shit out. He is a top 5 quarterback. He know what his money range is going to always be around as long as he in that. Motherfucker like Baker Mayfield need an agent. All right? He need an agent to negotiate to try to figure out how to. And plus, people keep saying, "Oh, he would have had a contract right now if he had an agent." Yeah, and it wouldn't have been for the money that he was looking for. Agents would have settled. That's why he don't got one. He a big dog, and that's a message to everybody, bro. Manage your own life, bro. You don't need no. If you want to hire an agent, hire help out there, do that. If you don't do it. Don't hate on. I just don't get this thing with people, because I just think it's hating at this point. Either way, Lamar Jackson's gonna get paid. Point blank, period. And could you imagine if because, real quick before we close out, bro, because, I'm hearing everybody, I heard Ed Reed's thing, the Baltimore business, they're not going to pay you if you get hurt, I really hate that Lamar in this position. I done said this before because, you look at everything that this man done since getting into the league, right? And you give his resume. I said it before we even got to this situation. I said it last year. Take your favorite player not named Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and switch Lamar's resume with theirs. They go for Josh Allen. They go for Baker Mayfield. Obviously, they go for Joe Burrow, even Matthew Stafford. Switch their careers. You do not question those quarterbacks if they had Lamar's resume. The way people question Lamar, the way people discourage this dude, the way they put him down, the way they always moving the goalposts. Give his resume to the Baker Mayfields of the world. I literally saw somebody today, what's his name, Mike Florio, say the jury's still out on Baker. How? This dude was the first pick in the draft, ain't been nowhere near as good as Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And the jury is still out? Done been traded away from the fucking team that drafted him. But the jury is still out. But they question Lamar Jackson at every turn. Do we not see the biasness? I told my homie before, the only reason people still giving Baker Mayfield a chance is because he is a white dude who was the first pick in the draft. Because Lamar Jackson has lapped Baker Mayfield's career 10 times over. And they still question everything Lamar do. He a unanimous MVP. Only 2 of those shits exist. They still question everything they do. I'm seeing these dumbass videos on YouTube from dumb motherfuckers like Doug Goddard talking about, let's slow down on Lamar Jackson. I don't look at these videos. I don't give these motherfuckers a time of day. I only read the titles. I don't need to dive into them and see the negativity and the ignorance spewed from these motherfuckers' mouths. I don't. Dudes who could never do it, who've never done it. And I'm not even that type of motherfucker, oh, you never played this sport. But some of these motherfuckers really do talk and act as if they've played it. And that's why I hated how they shit on guys who clear. And, I said this before. We like to crown everybody, all these damn they make everybody better. Lamar Jackson is a player who actually makes players better. He is actually the rising tide that lifts all boats. But yet people still want to act like, they don't like the way he do it. Like, it's insane to me. The disrespect is like, I've never seen a player on this level disrespected this much. Like, I saw a list today that was like the top 5 disrespected superstars in football, and Pat Mahomes was number 1. That's just silly to me. Because as much as people can say Pat Mahomes is disrespected, I've not seen a top 5 quarterback listing where Pat Mahomes was not in the top 3. Most of them have him at number 1. So that's silly. Lamar Jackson is so very clearly the most disrespected superstar I've ever seen in the NFL, or probably in really any sport. I mean, this kid's resume is ridiculous. And yet and still, he questioned it every turn. And the fact that the Baltimore Ravens, because I really think it's disrespectful what Baltimore doing. I really do. They banking on this kid. They gonna either run him dry or I really think they banking on this motherfucker to get hurt so they don't have to pay him that type of money. And I really hope Lamar make it ugly for them at the end of the season regardless of the outcome. The fact that this dude had to go into the season and play without that contract, when we all know, it don't matter who, if you like Lamar or not, we all know that 250 Deshaun Watson made, that will be topped by another quarterback eventually. You think Josh Allen ain't topping that when he make his second contract? You're fooling yourselves. If you really believe that Joe Burrow, somebody who done been to a Super Bowl, ain't going to want to top that Deshaun Watson contract, you're fooling yourself. And for normal people to be sitting around saying, oh, I just don't think they deserve that type of money because, you know, it's going to hinder our franchise. Bro, you're not paying any type of bills for their franchises. All right? You buying season tickets, you buying seats and concessions and jerseys. Yeah, you bring in a portion of the revenue. I promise you that revenue is not touching what the TV companies and all that shit is making them. Okay? You can never buy a Lamar Jackson jersey. His contract is still going to be the same. It's the same as if I work for McDonald's and nobody walk in that bitch and buy a burger that day. My check's still going to be the same. I'm not paid based on how many fucking burgers I sell. So, to me, it's silly to believe that Lamar Jackson, for one, don't deserve that contract if you the Ravens, and two, to force him to play without it. Because now, bro, do you think the Baltimore Ravens done tried to be cautious with Lamar over the last couple years to help him get paid? Because they keep saying, oh, we want to pay him, we want to pay him, we want to pay him. Do you think they ran him over the last couple years in a way that would keep him healthy so they could pay him? No. Do you think that they're going to try to, be cautious with how he plays so they can still pay him, so they can make sure he stay healthy and pay him? No. So, it's real funny. And like I said before, bro, it feel like sports is the only thing where people is like, they for the machine. In most walks of life, it's like down with the machine. We with the employees, not with the machine. Only in sports do, athletes get shitted on and the owners is made to look like they poor, struggling, and, hanging on by a thread. My boy, they billionaires. You see Kraft cheese in every motherfucking store you walk into. I promise you, Robert Kraft ain't going broke no time soon. Just go do your research. If you just think these owners is rich old white people, go look at how much they net worths are, bro. All right? I promise you they're not struggling. So, that's the show. I appreciate y'all for joining me. Now, tomorrow, I will be doing the predictions for this upcoming week. But, just a chill little night tonight. But I appreciate y'all for joining me on another episode of Kicking It with Saint. I fuck with you. I love you. Tell somebody you fuck with them. Tell somebody you love them. Give my Dukes a kiss on the cheek for me. Dap pops up. You only get one of those. Saint out.
I got the moves like hot sauce. Lil' mama taking the top off. I'm laying down getting topped off. After this, she getting knocked off. I know she loving the money, so I keep on thumbing and thumbing. She say she horny when she taking shots, so I keep them coming and coming. Now I'm putting dick in her tummy. Scoop her up like I'm raking her something. You would think shawty red track, the way that she running and running. You getting dumber and dumber. You out here chasing the bone. After she finished from giving me dome, the Uber is taking her home. Tight.